The Propagation of the Gospel 24. Epistle to the Hebrews. There has been more controversy about some points in relation to this epistle than perhaps any other book in the New Testament. The discussion, however, has had to do mostly with its authorship, the language in which it was originally written, and the parties to whom it was sent, for there is very little doubt about its canonicity and its inspiration. Well, does he ever really claim inspiration? Was it just, I have some ideas that I think are approved for God? That's not quite the same thing as inspiration, according to other traditions, but the notion has widely prevailed that it was intended as a kind of encyclical epistle for the Jewish converts generally, like the Epistle of James, which explicitly states that to be his intention. The marked absence of any note of address at the beginning, such as characterizes every other epistolary book in the New Testament, not only leaves this point, but also that of its author, of the author in doubt, while it, in some degree, indicates a difference in the object of the writer. But as nearly as can be ascertained, the best authorities agree in this, that it was not addressed to the Jews nor Jewish Christians generally, but either to a particular church composed primarily of Jews, or to a particular circle or class of Jewish Christians in Alexandria or Jerusalem. The best authorities also agree in the opinion that it was originally written in Greek and therefore doubtless addressed to some body of Hellenistic Jewish Christians. The last would seem to indicate Alexandria as the locality, while some other circumstances point to Jerusalem as the place and a special class as the persons addressed. As to the writer, the popular idea has been that it was written by Paul, although he is not alluded to in the book. Careful criticism, however, finds so much evidence against the validity of this opinion as to, at least, make it doubtful. The thoughts themselves and the general course of the reasoning are sufficiently Pauline, but the language and style are dissimilar to Paul's. But whoever may have been the author, there is, and has been said, little room for doubt concerning the genuineness and inspiration of the book, as far as the Christian is told. There is another peculiarity about it. It is less like an epistle than any other book that bears that name. Though not destitute of epistolary characteristics, its style is somewhat that of a treatise, having a particular subject to discuss. It is of the nature of a theological essay. The object of the writing seems to have been to correct a tendency among those addressed to slide into a formal Judaism and thus apostatize from spiritual Christianity to rest in the ceremonies of the temple service instead of entering into that higher experience of which there were only types and shadows. Well, there's esoteric layers, but that doesn't mean that it's referred to in a way that can't be taken literally. It sounds like a lie when you see the truth. I don't know about lying to people to get the way out. That's, you can have mythology that's true on the literal sense and on other levels, and useful in other ways too. But this gives the writer an opportunity to set forth in order the actual relation to the Mosaic system to Christ, of the Mosaic system to Christ and Christianity. The book furnishes a masterly representation of the connection between the Mosaic and the Christian dispensations. The leading topic is the grand preeminence of Christ and his completeness for the deliverance of humanity from all evils and the supply of all its spiritual wants, as connected with the imperfectness, insufficiency, incompetency of the Mosaic system without him, and his complement and the antitype of its principal ceremonies. What is the difference of opinion? What difference of opinion has prevailed concerning this book? What has been a common opinion? Are there any reasons for a contrary opinion? How does the beginning differ from that of every other epistle? What theory of some weight do we have concerning its character and the parties to whom it was written? What difference of opinion concerning the writer? What are some of the reasons for supposing it to be Paul's writing? Just like the canonical Gospels, they were written after Paul was dead by people who probably didn't even know Paul. But, pseudo-epigraphal kind of operates that way. What reasons against this supposition? Do these diverse views affect the question of its authenticity or inspiration? What other peculiarity about the book, its main object, what is set forth, the leading topic, what two methods of revelation are spoke of? Chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. How is Christ compared with the angels? 3 through 14. What forcible argument is drawn from this respecting obedience to Christ? 2, 1 through 4. What is man's rank as compared with the angels? 6 through 8. Well, it depends on what you mean by angels, but if you say the light beings, the ungendered, unfallen angels, you're saying, well, if humans succeed, they're superior. But if they don't, they're inferior. But these perfect beings don't have a choice in it, so, that's why. Why was it necessary when as we have seen Jesus was infinitely superior to the angels, that he should be made inferior to them? What objects were to be achieved? What nature did he take on? 9 through 18. Well, we're supposed to be perfecting, aren't we? In what respect is Christ greater than Moses? 3, 1 through 6. In Islam, they don't have, to draw the difference is they don't invent discrimination. They don't invent distinctions, and they do not hold discriminations between the messiahs and prophets and that sort of thing, saying one's better, what time they came, where they were, that's where the distinction is made. But 3, 1 through 6. What is argued from this respecting the consequence of disbelief in Christ? Verses 7 through 11, 12 through 19, 4, 1 and 2. What remarkable description of the divine world? 12 and 13. How is Christ superior to the Aaronic high priest? 14 and 15. Was this where we talk about Melchizedek and stuff? And how Melchizedek's superior even to what people would say God is, at least from the Christian point of view. 5, 1 through 4. Also verses 6. Also verses 5, 6, 7, 9. Chapter 7, 28. What is said concerning the superiority of Christ's priestly order to that of Aaron? Chapter 5, 10. 7, 13, 14, 21, 22, 23 through 26. What is the argument to show the superiority of Melchizedek to Aaron? Chapter 7, 1, 2, 4 through 10. How does the holy place or sanctuary of which the Jewish high priest was minister compare with that of Christ? Chapter 8, verses 2 and 5. How do the two covenants compare? Verses 6 through 9, 10 through 12. Were the ordinances and offices and appointments of the former dispensation effectual and satisfactory, or only typical? 9, 1 through 8, 9, also verses 9, 10, 12, and 13, chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. What does Christ do that the former cannot do, and which they only prefigure? 9, verses 11, 14, 23, 24, and 28. What is the interference then concerning the continuance or cessation of the Jewish ritual? What is the real and effectual offering, the substance of which the Levitical sacrifices were the shadow, the antitype of which they were the type? 10, verses 5, 7, 9, and 10. Is there any need for further sacrifice? 14 and 18. The effect of this sacrifice upon those who in faith accept it? 16 and 17. Well, Jesus ordered animal sacrifice, but they're saying, well, it happened before his crucifixion, which is the weakest part of the story, but animal slaughter has been despiritualized. That doesn't really accomplish much of anything. What rebuke is administered to, I'll just say the poor, because heathen and pagan are words for different material culture, not different faith. And so basically the people who aren't the people of the city, the country folk and the poor. But 5, 11 through 14, what is the process of the spiritual life when once begun? Chapter 6, 1 through 3, what peril is involved in remaining stationary or receding? 4 through 6, how does the great inheritance come to God's children? 11 and 12, remember my explanation for the spring equinox ceremony that I did this year, my contemplation that I had selected talks about how people can be, the reference to children of God, children of the devil, that sort of thing. What is meant by that? 11 and 12. How does he represent the assurance of the inheritance and the value of the hope? 13 through 20. Having compiled the doctrinal exposition, the writer now proceeds to apply the principles evolved. How does he group the particulars in which Christ becomes the fulfillment of the types implied in the Jewish altar service? Well, plahrose would have meant that he restored the thing, and he talks about not doing away with any of the law. So fulfillment to a Christian means something different than it does in the languages that they use. So there's altar service. And what encouragement is held forth? Chapter 10, 19 through 23. What is said concerning religious communion? Verses 24 and 25. What dangers are involved, and how do these compare with those under the old dispensation? 26 to 31. What had these Christians already suffered, and to what does the writer exhort them? 32 through 39. What is the subject of the chapter 11? Mention some of the prominent examples of faith. 4 through 32. How does faith differ from belief? What power had faith imparted to many not named? Verses 33 through 40. What is the inference? 12, 1 through 3. What is said concerning the benefit of affliction? Verses 4 through 11 of chapter 12. What special exhortations follow? 12 through 17. What remarkable comparison is made illustrative of the two dispensations? 18 through 29. What particular virtues are commended? Chapter 13, verses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 16. Against what are they warned, and on what ground? 8 through 15. And if we look at any issue, we can say disbelief, belief, faith, and knowledge is a position that we can go to, and that would be Surah 102 in the Quran kind of talks about that sort of breakdown, and certain scholars